Hello.
All right, so this is going to be our Title 101 class. This is part of our complete agent development. We are lucky enough to have Holbrook and Holbrook in the house. I believe they brought their entire office, which is always exciting. But we are going to be learning from Jody. He has a wealth of information and knowledge and has promised that we are going to laugh, cry, and just really experience a truly uplifting event with him speaking. So I cannot wait. I hope it didn't build you up too much, but yeah, take it away, Jody. It's all you, man.
Absolutely. Thank you. We will be going through what's Title 101. So Kim had sent over an agenda for us based on the RE/MAX Momentum education platform. So this will be the title section of that. I know you all have other sections coming up in the future. One from a lender, one from on the listing side, that kind of thing that will be given by other folks, but I'll be handling the title section of the class for you all. Like I said, we have titled that Title 101. We'll be going through. I do have pamphlets here and some flash drives that will have some of the exhibits and worksheets that we go through here. So if you need those, there'll be some extras left here at the office for anybody on Zoom or watching this on a recording to come pick up. So without further ado, we will get started here. So first we'll go over kind of what we're doing. I hope you all can see this shared screen. Lesson 1, so the first part we'll go through title insurance and the title commitment and what's all on that. Part 2 will be how to request title work for a real estate closing with Holbrook and Holbrook. And 3, we'll go through the closing documents. So what you're going to watch your borrower or your seller go through at a typical closing. We're also going to cover what are the typical closing costs and how to break that down for your seller ahead of closing, doing a seller net sheet. And I will give you all an Excel spreadsheet that we came up with for this class just to make that easy for you. And then finally, we'll do expectations and responsibilities of the title company. So it just lets everybody know kind of what we're doing, what's going on behind the scenes. I know it kind of goes into a black hole sometimes for you all once the contract is executed and the wheels start turning. You turn it over to the lender, they'll send it to us, and it kind of goes dark for a minute. With Holbrook and Holbrook, we want to make sure you all are kept in the loop, just so you know what's going on and can keep your clients informed. We understand that anytime there's a lack of information, people will fill in the blanks, and usually not charitably. So if it's quiet, they'll assume there's an issue. But we want to keep you guys informed. So first things we're going to go over, what is title insurance? It's a common question people get. So there are 2 main types, and you do have this flyer in your form. On that little flash drive in your folders, you have the digital version of this in case you wanted to add it to a buying presentation or something for your buyers. Just want to make sure you can still print those out after the fact. But we'll run through it. So the 2 types are the loan policy and the owner's policy. So kind of as they sound, the lender's policy protects the lender in a transaction against claims on title. So the way that typically comes up is the buyer buys the house, uses the loan, the lender gets the policy, and then the buyer stops making the mortgage payments. The lender goes to foreclose on the property, and at that point finds out, oh, there's somebody else in front of my interest as the lender. So when I foreclose, say we get $200,000 out of the house, the loan is $180,000 left, should be no problem, except, oh, there's this $40,000 judgment lien in the way. So the lender's not going to get their whole $180,000 back. The lender's title insurance policy steps in, takes care of that, makes sure the lender gets paid whole. So most lenders, especially with residential transactions, are going to require the buyer to pay for the lender's policy. The owner's title insurance policy, which protects the owner of the property and the owner's equity, is an optional coverage in Kentucky. So a lot of states require that. Here in Kentucky, we make that an optional coverage for the buyers. This will be typically offered to your borrowers at the closing table. Usually towards the end of the closing, the closer will go through what it is, give them the premium, the amount that it costs, and the premium will depend on the purchase price of the property and the loan amount. because if the loan is higher, that leftover portion that the owner's policy covers is smaller. So the bigger the loan amount, the cheaper that owner's title insurance. Kind of unfortunately, that also means that the least valuable it is to your party. If you've got a person buying all cash, they're on their own. There's no lender's policy there taking up any chunk of it. It's all their money on the line. That owner's policy is going to be a little bit more. And in that case, it's just based on the purchase price. So another piece of that equation is how long does each policy last? So how long are we protected? The lender's title insurance policy is only for the amount of the loan, because that's all we're concerned with on that one, is getting the lender paid back. And as the loan gets paid off, that coverage decreases. So that owner's title insurance policy, if it's issued, if the buyer selects to purchase it, that will cover the equity. So that stays the same. That covers them for the entire time that they or their heirs will own that property. And in most cases, it even provides some coverage after they've sold it. So if they've sold it and the person they sold it to comes forward and says, hey, you sold me something with an issue, if they bought that owner's policy, they can lean on that to resolve that issue as well. For the folks here, any questions about title insurance, what it is it optional? It is optional on the owner side. And there's a brochure in that folder that kind of gives your folks a little more information. I recommend getting owner's title insurance. I always do, just for the peace of mind. It essentially guarantees marketability of that title later on, so that when they go to sell their property, if their buyer says, well, we want this problem taken care of, they can move right on, no delays in closing, because the seller has the owner's title insurance policy from when they bought the property. And the new title insurance company for the buyer then relies on the seller's old policy to keep moving. So it's, if nothing else, it's peace of mind and it prevents delays. You don't have to worry about it.
And if you guys like these little brochures that we have and want to give them to your buyers or anything like that, we have tons of them. So just you can let
Yeah,
me know.
the older public, the folding title insurance brochures, we can get you a stack of those anytime. Next on our agenda that we need to cover is the title commitment. So title commitments are what the title company will send to the lender. And that will be the promise to issue that lender's policy at the closing. Real estate agents typically don't get sent this. You can. We are happy to provide it to you if you had any questions about what showed up. You know, people say, well, what showed up on title, or what do we have to deal with there if you've got a seller or even a buyer who wants to know what showed up on the title report. We're happy to send that over to you. It's just where we're typically only dealing with a lender's policy at first, at least. This is sent to the lender. And I just want to give you all a brief overview of what is on that in case your buyers do have a question. Again, there's another form that you can print out and give to them. The basic layout of a title commitment is about 4 schedules or exhibits. So the Schedule A is the first page, and that's going to have who's the insured party, and that's going to be the lender. So they're the insured. It's also going to address the property, tell you where the address is, and who the buyer is will be on there as well. It's also going to say who currently owns the property. So it's kind of an overview of the transaction with the loan amount and all that. Schedule B1. So when you get into that, that's the requirements, which would be a list of things that need to happen before closing. We're at closing. Paying off the seller's mortgage is the big one. Usually most people have a mortgage on their home. When they go to sell it, first thing we're going to do is get the payoff amount, make sure that that gets paid off so that your new buyer doesn't have to worry about it. So that's the requirement you're always going to see when there's a mortgage, will be to pay off and release that mortgage. It's also where you're going to find judgment liens, delinquent taxes, things of that nature that also affect the property that have to be cleared up before closing. The requirements, we're also going to require in there that the deed transfer from the seller to the buyer. So that's a pretty significant part of a closing, is transferring the property over, and anything else. So the judgment liens, again, you all don't see this usually because it goes to the lender, but those judgment liens that show up on the title commitment at first are going to be all possible judgment liens. The way judgment liens are indexed in the land records is by name. So if you have Jennifer Jones selling a house in Lexington or Louisville, when we do a title search, you don't have the only Jennifer Jones in Lexington and Louisville. And probably not the only one who maybe didn't make a credit card payment once upon a time. So those liens aren't necessarily against your seller, but they're still going to show up there. And then we will put like a subject to verification, and we start immediately working on clearing all those problems. Another thing that might be on there would be an unreleased mortgage. And what they're talking about when you hear unreleased mortgage is a prior owner had a mortgage, it got paid off, but the bank or the lender didn't file that release in the county clerk's office. That is unfortunately not that uncommon. It happens quite a bit. And again, we're going to start working immediately to clear those up for the seller and for the buyer just to keep things moving. Some more rural areas where the smaller local banks are doing the lending, they will control the closing and they just order a title opinion from a local attorney. In that case, the lender who's handling all the closing instead of having a title company do it is just going to reach out to the seller and say, hey, this is what was found on the property. We need to get it cleared up before we can close. And it's not typically the way it goes here in Lexington, but if you do have a buyer going with the bank like that, or if you have the selling side and the buyer chooses a bank like that, you might have to do some work on there. If you have any questions about those, please feel free, even though obviously we won't be doing that transaction, reach out. I'm happy to help or point you in the right direction. Like, yeah, you'll need to get, here's an authorization, get your seller to sign it, and we'll get this taken care of for you. Happy to do that. Schedule B2, which is the next one in line, is then going to have the exceptions to the policy. The exceptions will include things affecting the property, but that don't necessarily have to get cleared up. So you're talking the HOA restrictions. We'll want to mention those. If there's any easements on the property, the current year's property taxes, like, yeah, they're going to come due in the fall. It's like every other year, but we don't have to address that now. We just want to tell everybody it's coming. And then we'll proactively prorate those on the settlement statement. And we'll go through how that works later on in the settlement statements part. So that's kind of what you'll expect to see on the title commitment. Again, I don't want to belabor this too much because it's not something that the real estate agent side is going to have to deal with more often. So I do want to know the exhibit A is just the legal description of the property, which will either be a meets and bounds, like a description starting at the rock on the hill and then 400 feet at 35 degrees north. You've seen those. It looks pretty much like gibberish unless you're a surveyor. But that's one style. You see that more in the rural areas of the state. For most cities, you're talking about subdivisions, and there will be like a block and lot style plat designation where it's lot 4 of Summerfield subdivision based on this plat, which is a map that's recorded in the land records. And then you can just pull that plat up, look for lot 4, and that's your property. Those are a little easier to wrap your head around just at a glance for some of us who aren't surveyors. But that's the title commitment. For an all cash purchase where we're not doing a lender's policy, we're going to send you a title opinion letter, and that will typically come to you all as the agents. And that'll include kind of the same information, all the easements, restrictions, plats, a legal description, anything that needs to be taken care of will be on there. And again, on those, we're going to start immediately to clear up any issues. So nothing that needs to be done on your all's end. If you did have questions, please just reach out. Or if you'd like me to reach out directly to your client to kind of put them at ease, if they've seen something they don't like, I'm happy to have those conversations. For the folks that are here or joining us on Zoom, were there any questions about title commitments? Again, this isn't the bulk of what's going to be most important to you guys, so I want to keep that part moving. Next cover here coming in was how to place and monitor your request for title with Holbrook and Holbrook. Let's see. So this first thing we'll do is when there is a lender involved. So the way that you can help kind of control your team and keep it all in one place and know where you're going to be working with on the buyer side is you can kind of ask the loan officer or the lender to send the transaction over to us. And we're happy to work on those for you. So the first thing you got to do is figure out who the lender is. Usually as the buyer, you're going to know who your client's working with, whether you've suggested the loan officer to your client or the borrower is giving you a pre-approval letter. So that's a good spot to get that contact info if you don't know the lender that your buyer is working with. You know, if they come to you with, oh, I've already picked my financing, they're friends from church or whatever, that's fine. Just, you know, as you all know, we got to get that pre-approval letter before you even consider submitting an offer these days. And on that, you should have the buyer or the lender's information. Then all it takes, once you get that contract signed by everybody and we're ready to go, is just make the contact. And all we would ask is shoot an email to that lender that's working with your buyer and copy one of us on it. And then we'll make the introductions and take it from there. That way you're not trying to play middleman other than that a little bit. But yeah, the title request when a lender is involved comes from the lender in most instances. That's the way they do it. So, and if you have any questions about, hey, how can I make this happen? Just give us a shout. And we'll get back to you.
About at what point do lenders, if the agent doesn't get involved, what point does the lender reach out to you all in the transaction?
Okay, so the question, if you couldn't hear it, was at what point does the lender order title? And that depends on the lender. So some of them will send it to us immediately because they want to get that ball rolling. And sometimes lenders will hold off. And we're seeing more of that now that appraisals, if an appraisal is involved in the contract, they want to go ahead and order the appraisal, see if that worked, because a lot of deals fall through. Some lenders will wait until after the inspection period, if there is an inspection period. I know a lot of contracts these days don't, but if you still have an inspection period, then they'll wait until that's kind of done. And I guess they're doing that because they don't want to have us starting the process if it's not going to close. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But
do you prefer it? Or
I would prefer
to
go
do
ahead
it
and
at
let's
the
get
beginning?
it. Let's
I
go ahead
would
and do
too,
it.
and I've wondered about that because I have a lender I use a lot, and he does the reaching out, and I was always used to doing it all.
Right.
So I would send it, but I would notice that if I didn't, it would take weeks for them to look up the title.
And a lot of times they do that. Like I said, they're probably being nice, but we would actually prefer, let's go ahead and get started. That way, if there are any unknown issues, we're starting to work on those day one. So when, for your all's info, because it kind of, like you said, goes to the lender and then gets dark on you for a couple of weeks, you're going to know if your deal is with us as soon as we get the order. It gets put in within an hour or so of us receiving it, definitely same day, and our system will automatically generate an email to all the agents on that contract. That way, you know, hey, this file has been opened with Holbrook and Holbrook. And then probably 10 minutes after that first email, you get a second email that says, here's all the information we're going to need from you all from closing. And it's a little link that is in that email. Click the link, fill out your info. You know, we're asking for your parties, the buyers or sellers, their contact info. And then we ask for the commission info, pretty much is what's on the agent link.
I just make a rule on our dot loop. There already is a link to Holbrook and Holbrook. If you guys haven't noticed. So when I have an accepted contract, when I send it, back to the office, I'll automatically go and link that with Holbrook and Holbrook through dot loop. And go in and send the contract to them at that time. And then I let my lender know I've already sent this to Holbrook. And then from there, they kind of.
We can connect with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. All it takes is that just connection. We know who's driving the boat with the lender. We can, we'll reach out and take it from there. And then you all will be kept informed with those auto emails that come to you. That way, you know, hey, they've got it, they're working on it, files in progress. If you have sent a deal to a lender or sent a deal to us and you don't get that within a day, go ahead and reach out to somebody directly. It could have been it went to the wrong place, could have been the lenders dragging their feet, and you just want to get the ball rolling. And then we can reach out to the lender directly for you. When there's no lender involved, so with a cash transaction, then the order for title request or title work is going to come directly from the buyer or the buyer's agent. And we've given you all several options for that. There's an online order option on our website. You just click the button. It gives you a place to upload the contract if you want to do that route. Obviously, you can just email it. I know a lot of agents will just include, like you were saying, our email in that dot loop. Once it's all signed, it comes directly to us, and that works great too. The orders at Holbrook and Holbrook, you can order directly through there, or again, just send the contract via email to anybody. Send me, Becca, whomever, and we'll get it started. Just make sure you get that auto reply to know that it's going. The next thing we're supposed to cover is the documents that you see at closing when you're there with your clients. So kind of the first picture there is a large stack. I know it can feel that way when the buyers sit down. We'll go through kind of briefly what all is going on when it comes to that. First, we've got the settlement statements. So I want to cover what types of settlement statements you all might see at a closing. So TRID was a law that I'm sure you've all heard about. It's part of the Dodd-Frank Act, and that is a disclosure requirement that will split the settlement statement up. So before 2015, we all used that HUD-1, which is the first picture you see. It's still used for cash deals, but that used to be used for everything from refinances to lender purchases, all of it. Like I said, in 2015, they went to the split closing disclosures. Now, their stated goals of the closing disclosures was to keep the buyer's loan information, like interest rate, loan amount, that kind of stuff, away from the seller. The seller doesn't need to know the buyer's payment terms or their interest rate that they got. The other part was to have one at a glance page that the buyer can see before they show up to closing and know what the terms of their loan are. Back 2006, 7, 8, and before, sometimes buyers or borrowers would show up to the closing and everything they had discussed with their lender is now changed. So they're on the spot where, do I go through with this, or do I tell the people to unload the U-Haul that's in the parking lot, right? So it was a high pressure sales tactic that some, unscrupulous loan officers would do there. This way, it's supposed to be a pretty simple, straightforward. On the first page of the closing disclosure that you may be going over with your clients, you're going to see that loan amount, interest rate. Down towards the middle bottom, you're going to see their monthly payment and that bottom line cash to close that they're going to need at closing. So that is made it pretty simple for the buyers to see. But what it also did was create a situation where you've got, now the sellers have their own closing disclosure to go over. The itinerary that they gave us for today, they just wanted us to focus on the HUD-1 settlement statement. So you do have a copy of that in your program. And that's got the buyers section on the left, sellers section on the right, and it breaks it all down together. The other type of settlement statement that you'll see at closing is people call an ALTA, and that's the combined settlement statement. So at a typical residential closing with a loan, you'll have the buyer's CD, the seller's CD, and then they combine it with the ALTA. And everybody at the table will get a copy of the ALTA. That's typically what you'll turn in with the commission checks to the brokers. And they all have the same information, just broken down a little differently. Again, the HUD these days is just used for commercial transactions or all cash, where there's no loan info. Any questions about settlement statements? I know we've done other classes in the past where we really dive in and go through item line by line of how to read the settlement statement. Given all the material we wanted to hit today, we didn't have time for that. But if you do have any questions, if you get a settlement statement from us, if you get one from a lender on a deal we're not even involved in, and the buyer has some questions, I'm happy to run through it with them. Or I'm happy to go through it with you so that then you can relay that to your buyers if they had anything you're confused about. Any questions on the settlement statements before we move on to other loan documents or closing documents? So what's in the rest of that inch thick stack that shows up at the closing table? Most of that is going to be the loan document. So loan packages can be over 100 pages these days, and it seems like they get longer every year. The down payment assistance programs, which is a second loan, make them even longer. So if you've got an FHA loan with a down payment assistance program, second loan, you can be in for 150-page loan closing. Most of those documents are going to be acknowledgements, notices, authorizations that allow not the current lender, but the investors to do their due diligence. So they want to be able to pull taxes if they need to. So you'll have a tax form. They want to be able to verify the credits. You'll have, things like that are authorizing those quality control checks for investors of the loan. You also got affidavits. So you'll have one that says what your address is. Yeah, I'm going to be living at the property. You'll have another one that says I promise to use this as my residence. So I'm not going to rent it out the first year. Got another one that says I am all the people that showed up on my credit report. So sometimes people have multiple names over a lifetime. And sometimes even if they haven't changed their name, sometimes they'll finance it with a middle initial. Sometimes they'll finance it with a middle name or no middle name or initial at all. All those names show up on the credit report, and the lender wants to know you're all these people, right? So a lot of those documents in the package are kind of boilerplate, say the same thing every single time, but they still have to get signed. We at closings try to go meet the buyer where they are. If they are on their fourth house and this is old hat, we're not going to belabor them with what everything is. They're just like, give them to me, let's sign, let's go. Happy to go that route with them. You get a first-time home buyer, maybe somebody who's just a little more cautious, wants to read stuff. We're happy to go through exactly what they're looking at on each document. We've had some folks that just want us to leave them alone and let them read. And if we know in advance, we'll send them everything in advance, and then they can contact us and get their questions answered before the closing table. If you don't know in advance, sometimes you just hang out and wait. I'm sure you've all been to longer closings because buyers want to read, and that's fine too. Our goal is to make sure that every party involved feels comfortable and secure in what they're doing. That's going to lead to happy clients the day after, which is Google reviews and Zillow reviews for everybody involved, which is what we want. We want those clients, not just for this deal, but for life, right? The next kind of document that you'll have at the closing is the recording documents, the ones that get recorded in the land records, memorializing for everyone, putting everyone on notice that the transaction happened and whether or not there are any encumbrances like the buyer's new mortgage. The deed is what transfers the property. So if your borrower or buyer at a closing has some question about who's going on title, is my spouse going on title with me, or we don't want to, or what? It's whoever's on that deed is who's going in title to the property. So sometimes there are miscommunications about who's supposed to be, and we want to make sure that if your buyer has any special considerations like, oh, my spouse isn't going in title, or I want to add my 19-year-old son to title, that kind of thing, we just need to know in advance. Some of those we'll have to do, especially if there's a lender involved, we'll have to do after the closing via quick claim deed. And if there's no lender, you can put pretty much whomever you want into title to the property. But just know that there may be, especially if people are trying to add parents or kids, that we may have to handle that outside kind of after the closing with the lender. A mortgage, in Kentucky, we refer to it as a mortgage. A lot of other states will say deed of trust, and that can get confusing. Like if you hear deed of trust, some people think, well, they're just talking about a deed. But they're actually talking about the mortgage, which is the collateral for the loan. So the lender, as you know, is giving money to the buyer to buy the house, and they want to use that house as security or collateral for their loan. That's what's going on there. Those get recorded in the land records and then get released when the mortgage is paid off, or when the loan is satisfied. Unfortunately, sometimes, like we discussed, lenders don't release those, but we'll work on that in the background to get that cleared up before the next closing. Other documents that get recorded in the clerk's office are power of attorney documents. So if one of your buyers or sellers can't attend and their spouse or someone else is going to take care of the signing for them, that power of attorney will be in there. Wills, if you have a property owner who passes away and the estate of that person is selling the property, the will has to be recorded in the land records. If there is a probated will, if not, you'll have an affidavit of descent, which kind of puts for everybody's knowledge who were the heirs of this person who used to own the property. And then those heirs can sell the property after that. Another thing with manufactured homes, a lot of times you will convert a manufactured home to real estate. Manufactured home starts out as essentially a car with a separate title. Then you bring it to the land, you install it, and if you're taking a mortgage on the property, most lenders are going to want you to do a conversion to real estate. That requires the original title and then an affidavit of conversion, which we'll draft, and that gets recorded in the land records. From then on, that mobile home is a part of the land. It transfers with the deed, just like any other house would. The thing to remember about recording documents is they all have to be original. They all have to be notarized. So a copy of a POA, it gets scanned across the country, is not going to cut it. We're going to have to UPS that. Some counties are slowly going to online recordings. And those, the closing attorney has to have the original, but they only send the scan of it, which can help for sometimes when buyers or sellers are like, well, this is the only POA I have for mom and she's in memory care now and can't sign another one. They don't want to let those go. And I understand that. And one thing that they can do in advance of closing is go ahead, take it to the county clerk's office, they'll record it and then give it right back to them. And then we can just reference that recorded version if you have a buyer or seller who doesn't want to turn loose of their original POA for whatever reason. Any questions on kind of the loan documents? I know that without a loan package in front of you, it's kind of hard to have the questions, but it's really a boilerplate. I mean, if there's any safety in numbers, every borrower in the state of Kentucky is signing pretty much the exact same document. And they do that so that when they sell them to investors, the investors don't have to review it all. They're like, this is a Kentucky package. We know what's in it. As long as the checklist is full, we got all the documents we expect, we'll move it right along. The main attraction of the loan documents is that promissory note. So that's the note's usually signed really quickly in the closing, right up front. It's what the lender is most concerned with. And that will include all the terms, payments, interest rate. That's the buyer's promise to repay, not only with the property, but individually. So, if the lender forecloses on the property and takes the house back, but if the sale of the house doesn't fully satisfy that loan, they can go after the individual borrowers to cover that difference based on their promise in the note. All right, so now we've kind of got the boilerplate stuff that I was tasked with covering for you guys out of the way. The next little bit is kind of what I was more excited about because I think that's going to be more valuable, more about the questions you actually get. So I wanted to kind of rush through that first part so we can spend some time here. Closing costs. Closing costs can be negotiated. So there are typical buyer costs and typical seller costs, but you can always adjust that on the contract. So if the seller doesn't want to pay the transfer tax, which is $1 per thousand, you can contract that to where the buyer will pay for it. Right now with offers being so competitive, I think that throwing in transfer tax, it's not a big deal. If you got a $200,000 house, it's a $200 expenditure. But having that extra thing, if a seller's looking at, well, here's a $150,000 offer, here's a $150,000 offer. Nobody's inspecting the property. They're waiving the appraisals. How are we going to pick the one from the other? Well, this one says they're going to pay the transfer tax for us. $200 could get your clients the house instead of missing out.
Does anyone do that? Putting it on?
I have a client that wanted, because we put the rule, it's gonna close at the end of May and he's gonna pay the whole year tax.
Yeah.
You got it because of that?
I mean, with people receiving 15 and 20 offers, there's going to be 3 that are really close at the top. And if you want to differentiate yourself, I Some people get creative. We had one contract that came over where the buyers were offering 2 weeks at their vacation home to the sellers. It's like, I mean, it's crazy. We're seeing everything in
Did anyone
offers.
offer a gas card or something for their
Yeah, we've
vacation?
seen, yep,
Yeah.
we've seen movers. We'll pay for your movers.
I feel like that's ethical, because there is a certain amount, you can't be doing that.
I don't think it's illegal. I don't know.
Paying them to basically go. So that, it is, there's a word
Yeah.
for it, but that's a little.
I mean, you could also offer more money on the purchase price, which
Right.
is paying them to pick it too.
If
In a way.
you do it with
Right.
this, it's fine. The gas card and home vacation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do something like that, I would put it in the actual agreement, just so that the lender's aware. That way you're not hiding anything. If you're on the up and up, I think legally you're gonna be okay. That's right.
Addendum.
So your typical buyer fees, which buyers in Kentucky pay the majority of the closing costs, but not all. So buyers will pay obviously for any of their lender stuff. Anything the lender charges, the buyer's going to pay for. Then they have their escrow account. Some people forget that when they're calculating their cash to close at closing. The lender's going to have them escrow 3 months typically for property taxes and homeowners insurance, in addition to the first full year of homeowners insurance. So sometimes those costs get under the radar. If you're working with a great loan officer, then the loan officer is going to keep your borrower up to speed. If the buyers picked their own Rocket Mortgage out of Michigan loan officer, they may not know about that until it's later on down the line. So fill out your client, try to figure out who they're working with and if they're being taken care of. And if not, that's a place you can add some value to them. Next is the title and closing fees. So most of the time when people say closing costs, that's what they're thinking about for a buyer. There's usually a title examination fee, which is the closing fee. They're all around $600, $500 to $600 to $700, depending, but all in that ballpark, no matter who you're working with around Kentucky. Then you're also going to have the insurance premiums from that title insurance we discussed. Like I said, the lender's title insurance is going to be on there automatically. And that's based on the loan amount, because that's what it covers, is up to the loan. So if your buyers are getting a big loan, that lender's title insurance is going to be bigger. Smaller loan goes down proportionally. We've also got the recording fees. So buyers typically will pay to record the deed and usually always the mortgage. Any POAs that are being used on the buyer side, that will add a recording fee. Deeds, POAs, the recording fee is $50. For mortgages, it's either 80 or 126, depending on whether or not the lender is assigning that mortgage to MERS, which is an electronic registry, so that investors don't have to file assignments in the clerk's office whenever they buy it. They just move it in MERS. So it's a neat little thing they've come up with in the last 20 years or so. For the seller side closing costs, the big one there is the real estate commission. That's, the sellers typically will pay both sides out of the equity and loan. You really don't see that change much. They've also got any repair fees that they have, listing fees or marketing fees from the listing agent. Sellers will pay those for their side, and buyers will pay the marketing fee on their side if there is one. Title and closing fee for the seller. So you got the transfer tax that we discussed. Again, all these can be contracted differently, but typically the seller pays the transfer tax. And that is, like we said, $1 per thousand is the way it works out. Statutorily, like the actual statute in the state says 50 cents per $500 of value, which just means round up to the nearest 50 cents is kind of the way that goes. So if you're selling a $200,000 house, transfer tax is $200. There's also deed prep. So in Kentucky, customarily, the seller is responsible for providing the deed. That's another little, typically around $200 that attorneys will charge to draft the deed. And that can be another contracting part. It's like, hey, we'll pay for the deed on the thing. So on the contract. So if you get a couple little hits there that can add up. And sellers if they're looking at two equal offers, one of them throws an extra $500 worth of service in, it could get you selected. Then there's the prorations. So in this, prorations would be buyer and seller side, just depends on the time of year. And you prorate the property taxes, both for the county, the city, and some have independent school district separate taxes as well. So if you're downtown Paris, you're going to pay the Paris School District, City of Paris, and Bourbon County, as an example. Those are the property taxes. Some only have county taxes, just depending on where the property is located. And those will be prorated to the closing date. So right now, in every county except for Fayette, that tax bill is not known yet. It'll come out in the fall. So what we're going to do is estimate what that's going to be. And then we split it up so that the buyer pays just for the time they own the property, and the seller will pay the buyer a heads up, like, hey, we're going to give you 5 months worth of the property taxes up front at closing. And that was a great point about, no proration. So the buyer can just say in their offer, hey, we're not going to prorate taxes. We'll cover the whole year. Again, any little thing you can do right now will help set you apart on the contract negotiations. There are also HOA dues, which there's no exact clearinghouse. These aren't logged in the county clerk's offices, but those HOA dues get prorated. We'll make sure those get paid as well. Yeah. HOAs are a problem because some of them have like good setups where you can call the accountant or the treasurer of the HOA and they get you the info quickly. Some of them don't have anything and it's just floating around out there and the seller's like, I don't know, they send it once a year and we just mail it back, but I don't have a clue who to contact. And those are harder. So we try to keep a good database of neighborhoods and where to help that process out, but sometimes you just don't know. So that can be a sticking point for folks. But assuming we can get the HOA information, we'll prorate those as well so that everybody pays just for the time they own the property. Any questions on closing costs? Again, that's kind of the standard. Culturally, it's developed that that's who pays what, but all that can be contracted separately. So it's an opportunity for a real aggressive buyer to just set themselves apart.
I kind of seller that wants to bring his own deed closing, not paying that deed.
So that deed would need to be prepared by an attorney, but they can definitely select whomever they want. Now, so I've had sellers who are attorneys prepare their own deed, and that's fine. If they're a licensed attorney, we're comfortable with that. Title insurance underwriters are not comfortable with a seller just doing their own deed.
Well, I mean, like he was just property deed, he was closing and didn't.
Like his current deed?
Yeah. Like
That
didn't
doesn't help.
understand.
Yeah, that's not the way that works. A new deed needs to be drafted going with him, the seller as the seller. Yeah, you can't just bring yours and sign it over to him. Yeah. Yeah, it's not like a title. It's not like a title on a car where you bring your title and sign it over to them. The deed gets drafted. So if we do have situations and we offer that to them right up front, like, hey, if you don't want to pay deed prep, just have your attorney send over a copy of the deed and we'll let them know if it works. And usually the only things we're changing there are the buyer's names, because sometimes the seller doesn't know how the buyer's lender has listed them. So we'll just work back and forth with them. Yeah, if you have a client who's curious about that, just let us know. We're not going to cause a problem for everybody because the seller is trying to save a couple bucks. So we'll work it out. Any other closing cost questions? So the next one, this was something they specifically wanted us to get, was the seller net sheets, how to set up a net sheet for your seller. So the example that's there, and that comes from the Excel spreadsheet that's on your flash drives. We'll run through one real quick if you want, but that I did on the building we're in. Just quickly plug the numbers into that Excel and that's what you got. So if we assume this building gets sold for 1.5 million and the closing date is today, they've got the estimated property taxes, which that number is just what they paid last year. So that's where that came from. Currently, it's valued at about 1.3 million for this whole building. So that's that amount. You'll see the dates there for the county tax period, where this is Fayette County. That is going from last July 1st through this June 30th. Because that's the way the tax year works in Fayette County. It's the middle of the year. So at this point, the seller has already paid for the full year. They're going to get $2,629 back from the buyer. And that's why that's a negative number there in Fayette County, because the seller's portion at this point is a negative. So that adds to their proceeds at the bottom. Then you can put in the estimated mortgage payoffs, because that's going to be the biggest expense for most sellers. And we just fill in $1 million there. The real estate commission percentage breaks down. I put a little listing fee just to show it. That transfer tax is going to calculate automatically based on the purchase price there, $1,500. And then deed prep, seller closing fee. And you can give your clients that estimated net proceeds.
So those numbers, the prep seller closing fee.
Those are
that's the
hours.
same?
Yeah, those will stay the same each time.
Is there a net- This is just for the sellers.
Yeah, yeah, this is going to be a net sheet for the seller. So let me see. I'm going to try for the folks at home to switch which screen I'm sharing, and we will run through one really quick. My cursor here. Stop sharing this. Hello, everyone. And I will pull up the net sheet that's on there. So we'll go through it. Does anybody have a listing they want to use the address of? You got a current listing? All right, let me share the net sheet. Okay, what is the address of the property you want to work on? Is it in Lexington or Georgetown? All right, so on this net sheet at the bottom, because of the way the different counties, I'm sharing it with the Zoom folks, but I don't have it on our screen here locally. 1 second, guys. Sorry for the folks at home. All right. So this is what it's going to look like when you pull up that net sheet that we've created for you. So at the bottom, you'll see we're going to switch over to Kentucky from Fayette County because in every other county in the state, tax year starts January 1st. So what did you say our property address was? All right. So with the county, you can scroll down to Scott County. And I put that as a scroll down just so I could remove Fayette County, kind of as a reminder. Hey, if you're in Fayette County, don't use this one. Click at the bottom. The next thing we're going to do is figure out who owns that. So most of the PVAs have free systems that you can use. Scott County is no different. And we can just check really quick, see who's got that. We're also going to need to do that for the address. So if you all have a question on this, I'm happy to do that for you. Pull up the taxes for the previous year. Hopefully your sellers are the, let's see, the Newtons. Because if not, we've got a problem there. But it happens. But so the way, and we would just do this because if you're going to present it to the folks, to your seller, they go, hey, if we can list it for what you wanted, we're going to sell it for that because I'm great at my job. Here's what we're looking at at the back end. And because I haven't locked this sheet so that you guys could, if you wanted to delete Holbrook and Holbrook, put a picture of yourself and your contact info, it's not going to hurt my feelings. I'm doing this for you guys. So whatever is better marketing there works. What do you think you're going to get your purchase price to be? We'll just type that in, it's gonna set it up. When do you closing? Or when do you think? Well, let's say you're gonna close towards the end of the month. Go ahead and put that in. Now, for our property taxes, again, we're just basing that off the prior year. It's not too bad to go to the PVA or the sheriff's website there in Scott County to find out what you got. And I'll pull that up pretty quick here. Let's see. So last year they paid $1,455.82. So we'll pop that in. This is probably not going to change too much from year to year. If you're before April 1st, they'll use the purchase price instead of last year's assessment. So let's say if it's assessed at 200,000, you're selling it for 400,000, which in this market can happen from time to time. You're going to need to adjust that. If you have any questions, again, reach out. I'm happy to help do this part. Now, this property is in Georgetown, so you've got the Georgetown city taxes as well. We'll pull those real quick. So you can usually just Google, depending on the city. PBA is going to tell you if it's got city or not taxes. And for starters, I would just call the PBA in the county and ask them the question, hey, what's my parcel number? What is the tax district? And do you have county and city taxes on this property, or just city, or just county? That's typically the best way, is just to call them. Most of them are pretty helpful. Some aren't. So the total due for last year, which we're going to assume is the same because we're after April, for city taxes, it's going to be $107.90. So we'll pop that in. Now, with that information, you'll see the sheet is going to automatically prorate those based on the closing date. So you folks already know what they're going to have to pay the buyers to get out of it. The mortgage payoffs, we'll put 2 in there just in case they've got, home equity line. You see some folks have a second mortgage. For that, you're just going to want to ballpark it. You can typically look off their last statement to see what their outstanding balance is and add a little bit, but usually you're going to get them close with a ballpark figure. We'll say these people have $100,000. Yeah, you can ask them how much they owe, put that information in there. For commission, we'll assume 6, which is both sides, and that'll calculate that for you as well. Listing fees, if you had, like, I don't know if you do like an extra admin fee or anything like that. No, maybe no repairs. So it's going to automatically calculate transfer tax and the rest to us. Also put a thing in there for seller credit. You're seeing fewer of these as the market gets tighter, but in more normal times, a lot of times the seller will inflate the purchase price a little bit and then cut some money back to the buyer for their closing costs. So we put that in there as well. I don't know if you have that on your buyer seller credit. So that's done. Then at that point, you've got your net. I would just, you can print that sheet to a PDF, and that's what you can give to your seller, email to them, whatever, or you can, physically print it out in a sheet of paper.
This is a good sheet to run along with your sell by owner presentation.
Yeah, if you're doing a listing presentation, go ahead and estimate some of these numbers, like what do you think you can sell it for? Put that in there and let them know. Here's what we're looking at. And of course, if your mortgage is more or less than what I've estimated, you subtract what your mortgage payoff would be out of it. It lets them know that you're on top of the game, that you're a wealth of knowledge for them, because at that point, they're probably flying blind, right? And then just exit out of that and don't save it so that you're ready to do a blank one with the next folks. And that is on that flash drive that we've given everybody. So you'll have that for the folks at home if you want it. Yeah, we're going to leave some here at the office, but also you can just email me and I'll shoot a flash or the files to you.
I know
So
a couple of
kinda-
our agents have asked for that flash drive, so
What'd you say?
I know a couple of our agents have asked for that flash drive.
Yep, happy to hand those out. So there should be several of them left here. Should be an issue. Any questions on the seller net sheets? Again, you don't have to use the spreadsheet that we put together for this presentation, but that's kind of the items you want to hit. The proration formulas can get out of hand. I tried a few different variations to make it work. Fayette County was the biggest pain in the tail because of the way they do things. After July 1st, I'm gonna have to adjust that formula for you. So if you want to keep using it and you like it, after July 1st, shoot me an email and I'll get you the adjusted sheet, right? Because it'll have to adjust the dates. For the other counties, we'll do it next January 1st. We can send it out to you. And I'm working on trying to do like a Google Forms that you can just fill out online and do that instead of Excel, because I know some people don't even do computers anymore. I mean, you can do pretty much anything from your phone. Most real estate, yeah, most real estate agents are gonna have the laptop with them. They're ready to do that contract at a given moment, especially now where it's like, hey, we've got an open house from 2 to 4. We're accepting offers until 6. You know, they've got some pretty tight deadlines out there these days, but. All right.
I think Excel could have an app.
You probably can, yeah.
Oh, my.
Any other
Yeah.
questions on the net sheets? Move on. All right, the last thing that we were supposed to cover is what to expect from a title company. I've not worked at other title companies, so I don't have a lot of inside information on how it works everywhere else. I have heard plenty of complaints about other title companies, or even good things that other title companies are doing that we try to adopt. I've got no shame in taking a great idea and helping our clients with it. You know, I want to always be doing whatever is new and best for our folks. Even if we didn't come up with it, let's adopt it if it's great. If it works, it works. So I put together this little kind of contract to close with H&H, what you can expect from us as a title company. And I have a feeling a lot of title companies will aspire to the same kind of situation. First thing is going to be that file open. You're going to get an email immediately when that file hits our world. So once the lender sends it to us, or if you send it to us on a cash deal, you're going to know as soon as that gets put into our system. Now, we do on the website have the ability to log in if you wanted to and kind of keep track with your files on there. You never have to. Anything we need from you guys, we'll send out via email directly to you. But it's there in case you wanted to keep track or just wanted to check it out. The next phase after that gets open, we're going to send you those information sheets, which is, you know, let us know the condition. Let us know if your folks are doing a pest inspection that you'll want paid at closing, or if the buyers are getting a home warranty that they want paid at the closing, or if the sellers are paying for the home warranty, which again, seeing that less and less these days. But it'll come back. We'll get back to normal eventually. Next phase is kind of that what people call the escrow period there, where we're doing our title research, we're collecting all the information, we're getting mortgage payoffs, we're working behind the scenes. Now, we have client liaisons at the office that will reach out to you guys weekly, kind of let you know, here's the files you've got going on, and here's where the status is of those. But at any time, if you have a question, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll help you out. We just do that weekly kind of update to keep people in the light, in the loop, you know, out of the dark, to make sure that they know what's going on. And then at the end, we're going to schedule a closing. So lenders, when the loan is there, will let us know, hey, we're clear to close, we're ready to go. And some lenders will reach out and do that coordination directly with their borrower, like what time of the day would you like to close? Does Friday work for you? I know a lot of people like Fridays to move over the weekend. And then the lender will just let us know, hey, here's when we want it. You all get with the sellers and make sure it happens. And that's great. If you've got a cash deal, sometimes scheduling that can come to you all. We'll let you know when we're ready to go. Just let us know when you and the parties want to close it, and that's what we'll do. You have some options to schedule it. If you're driving the bus on scheduling, you can email schedule@Holbrook and Holbrook. And even if say it's 2 weeks out, but you want to lock in that 4 o'clock on Friday at the end of the month with everyone else, go ahead and schedule that a couple weeks early. Because, I would say 99% of the time we will make what you need work, but there are those 4 o'clock on Friday, the last day of the month, 10 o'clock in the morning on Friday, last day of the month. There are, the usual suspects that get busy quick. So definitely if you've got somebody who's, I can only go to closing on this day because that's my work will only let me off that time. Get those scheduled early and we'll go ahead, and even if it's a lender deal and we can't go ahead and confirm it because we don't know if the loan will be ready, we'll go ahead and save that spot for you. That way we know that once your lender is good and it's all good, we'll have a place to do your closing at the time.
You guys were really good. I had a closing where buyers and sellers couldn't be there at the same time. So you
Sure.
guys did the sellers, everything was great, and then we had the buyers.
Yeah, busy schedules for everyone these days. So it works. If you have a situation where you're not sure like what to do, give us a call. There are always options, whether it's a remote closing, a power of attorney, we can set that up in advance. If one party can't get there in time, you can have, if the husband and wife are selling, but the husband can't get off work at the same time as the wife, we'll do a POA for one of them and let them sign for both.
You need a little bit of time for that, though. I
You
would
can,
be 2
yeah.
days before. 'Cause we're like,
2 days we can make work. We can usually make work. You can still do notarizations via Zoom in Kentucky. So I've done situations where the day of closing, they're at work. Hey, I'm not going to be able to make it. Well, I'm going to email you a POA, print it at work. I'm going to send you a Zoom link. We'll do it just like this. And then I just need to get that POA back the day of closing. So if your husband runs by your office to pick it up on his way, or, even if you UPS it to us and we can get it the day after, if you have the ability to scan us a copy of it, and we know it's en route with UPS, that'll usually work in a bind too. So there are always options, and we have come up over the years, especially through COVID, where there were even more last minute disruptions like, hey, I know we're closing this afternoon, but I just tested positive. That's something we didn't worry about until spring 2020, but it happens. And we've always been able to figure out a way to do it. I've got one deal today where I just tested the Zoom with a guy who is in the militaries in China, and him and his wife are buying a house on Monday. So we're going to do that. He's got an embassy notary lined up, and I'll via Zoom go through the documents with him. It'll be 7 a.m. in Lexington when we do it, and it'll be 7 p.m. in Beijing for him. But we're going to make it work. So those.
The other person had to be in Kentucky.
So if I was going to notarize it, he would have to be in Kentucky, but he's going to have his own notary there.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm just
You're
zooming in
going
to make
through it.
sure they
Okay.
don't have any questions and that the loan documents all get signed properly.
Gotcha.
Any questions on what to expect throughout the closing process, at least with H&H? And like I said, we're not reinventing the wheel here. So every closing attorney is going to have to go through these steps of doing a title search, gathering information, and scheduling the closing. So you can pretty much expect that with anybody.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
One is, if you are doing a cash deal, how fast can you typically?
Yeah, so the question was cash deals, how quick? Call us if you have an issue. So normally our process to do that, if nobody tells us we're in a hurry, we're going to expect it'll be a couple weeks. So we'll turn that around and have an opinion letter back to you in a week.
Okay.
Looks like we've got an animal that's
I
joined
thought
us.
that was a remote vacuum cleaner.
I don't know what it was.
It's a dog in a dress for those of you at home. But
So my second question is,
we can do it quicker. So, and it also depends on what title issues are found. So, to get to closing, if you've got an unreleased mortgage and it's a HELOC from an owner back, that could be a big problem. So those would be the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, it's all good to go. As soon as we can get a mortgage payoff, we can probably 3 days, get that done, depending on who the seller's lender is, because again, we're at the mercy of other parties in that situation. So best case scenario, if there's no loan, you all needed to do it, from morning to afternoon. In most situations, we could probably turn it around in a few hours. Just depends on the, like I said, the seller's lender.
Right.
So best situation, 5 hours. Worst situation could take a couple weeks if there's unreleased mortgages.
My second question is, if I wanted to turn in my earnest money directly to the title company, how would I do that?
So that's fine. We have a lot of people opting for that, especially with the brokerages that aren't real or local, like you've got the EXPs and insurance. So they don't even have a place to turn in their earnest money except for the title company. We've got no problem holding that, even for you guys if you want to.
So I just bring the check to the.
You can. We've also got some online options. So with our website, today you've got buyers in California that want to buy Kentucky houses a lot. They're not here and they don't want to mail the check. So we use Deposit Link, which you can find info on their website about, or Earnest, which is another earnest money system. And in that case, as the agent, you just tell your buyer, hey, go to this website, go to Holbrook and Holbrook, fill it out and send them your earnest money through that. And then we've got it. They'll never have to leave their house. So there's no paper checks. You'd be surprised how many people don't have checks anymore. Maybe you wouldn't. I use a check for, I think, field trips with my daughters at school. I write a check. Hey, Dad, I need $4 to go to the Legends game. It's like, okay, we'll write a $4 check. PTA stuff. Usually it's school stuff. That's all we do with checks. So some people don't have them. And we've used Deposit Link creatively, not just for earnest money, but we had a lady who had an online bank and they don't do wire transfers. And she didn't have checks and she can't get a cashier's check because her bank's online. So she's like, what do we do?
Yeah.
Well, the Deposit Link uses ACH, so it's not good funds at closing like it's required. But we had her send it 2 days in advance. It cleared and she was able to close using that. So if you have questions like that, there may be ways that you're not aware of that we can work it out. And very rarely is there a situation we're just stuck. Some folks, the hardest one to unwind is Wells Fargo because there are no Wells Fargo branches and Wells Fargo they won't wire funds unless you're there up to like, I think it's $5,000 or $10,000. So if you've got 50 grand cash to close that you normally try to wire in, you're driving to Nashville to get that cashier's check or send that wire. So Deposit Link could be used for that too. It's got, I think, an $80,000 limit. So we have found creative ways to do that. And we're always happy to hold that earnest money for everybody. And then you don't have to worry about it at closing day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just there.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The other thing that we're seeing with those are some brokerages are going to Deposit Link totally. And what that allows them to do is we pay the commissions through that. And then it goes to the broker. The broker on an app can say, okay, I keep this much and the rest I send to the agent and it direct deposits straight into the agent's account. So
We did something pretty cool like that in our brokerage where we had a certain sheet we filled out right before closing, and when we got there, they cut the checks. One for the broker, one for the.
Yeah.
It's like they sent the commission slip from the broker.
Yeah.
To title wrote checks, and then I went home with my check.
Yeah, and we've done that too. You just, in order to do that, we've got to have, like you said, the letter of direction from the broker, because technically that's the brokerage's money on the commission. So without something from them saying, yeah, you can give our money to someone else, we're kind of hamstrung on that.
I was gonna talk to Melissa and Casey about that because they had like developed it maybe 2 years ago and it was really seamless. It was nice to be able to go.
That's
straight
not a
from
problem.
closing to your bank deposit. But then that's you delivering your own check to the bank, not direct deposit. So it just.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're happy to facilitate. We try to be set up for whatever comes our way, whether it's brokers that want to use Deposit Link or buyers that are out of town that want to send earnest money that way. And sometimes that can be a great contracting kind of negotiation as well. If you're like, we've already I sent our earnest money to the title company today, and I can give you all a printout showing where we've received it, saying it's already being held. That might make somebody feel pretty good about it too. So any advantage you can get these days, let's take it, because it is hard It is hard out there.
Yeah.
I saw an open house the other day that had about 150 people at it, in our neighborhood. It had cars blocked like all the way down the street. It was over there in Rabbit Run.
I hate doing open houses and only having one person or two people show up.
That's how it used to
I
be,
literally
yeah.
hate
Yeah.
doing open houses because nobody showed up.
Yeah,
And I felt like I was wasting
yeah. me
2 or
too.
4 hours of my day.
Well, we've completed the program that we set out to complete. Any other questions from anybody? Online or-
Nothing online on here that I see, but thank you so much, Jody. That was awesome, man.
I appreciate it, and we are happy to help. So if you have any questions after the fact, you've got my email address there. Please just reach out and we'll help you get it figured out. If you have any issues with the seller net sheets, if you got a listing appointment coming up, you're going to see a for sale by owner or got somebody that you knew, it's definitely, I think it makes an impact. It's like somebody did their homework. So I'm happy to help you all through those as well.
All right, thank you so much, sir.